All right, everyone, we're going to finish our unit in science right now. And we're going to talk about, first, we're going to talk about endangered species. So there are some endangered species in Utah. What does that mean if they're endangered? It means that they could become extinct if we don't do anything to protect them now. So we want to make sure that they are being protected and they don't become extinct. So any animal that's on the endangered list, we want to get off that list and make sure that they're protected and not in danger of being extinct. So here we have a picture of a desert tortoise. A desert tortoise is an endangered species in Utah. And first of all, what is a species? A species is a group of living organisms with similar characteristics. So they have a lot of things in common. Their characteristics are in common, and that makes them a certain species. That's why a dog is different from a cow, and a desert tortoise is different from a cricket. They are all different species because they have many different characteristics. So why do species become endangered, especially in Utah? Well, number one, invasive species can come in which can overpower and kill natural resources. So maybe another animal comes in and it decides it is not naturally from that environment, so it's introduced to the environment, and that animal maybe wants to eat the same thing as another animal, and so it takes over those natural resources and there's not enough food to eat. Or maybe it wants to live in the same type of shelter, same type of home, habitat as a native species here in Utah. Well, they're going to compete for space, and sometimes the invasive one that is overpowering takes over so that the native species can't thrive and can't live any longer in that environment. Another reason animals become endangered is from changes in the weather and the climate and human population growth. So humans, we affect environments by taking over, building homes, tearing down habitats, getting rid of natural things like sagebrush and trees and things like that. So we destroy habitats every time we go and build somewhere. All of these things affect many species' habitats, not just the ones that are endangered. Another endangered species is the prairie dog in Utah, and they're absolutely adorable. It's hard to imagine that they would be endangered, but they are on the list, as well as the desert tortoise. All right, so scientists have developed a system known as classification, and it's a way to group things and show relationships between living things and how living things are similar to each other. In order to classify something, we have to look at the outward appearance and the inward appearance inside of the animal to figure that out. So the outward appearance would include texture, size, shape, color of an animal. The inward appearance would be what is on the inside of the animal, which we will discuss more. So what is classification? Well, as you know, it's a way to group things. There are two main groups of living things on the earth: animals and plants. How are animals and plants different and the same? Well, they're both living. How are they different? Well, in every way they're different. They get their food different. Plants make their own food. Animals most of the time don't make their own food inside of their bodies. We have to get food and put it inside our bodies as animals. When we classify plants, we can do so by maybe starting with the leaves, for example. We have a quaking aspen tree and a juniper tree, and we can tell that those are two different species of trees, but maybe we want to just compare the leaves to start with. So the aspen tree has wide leaves, they're flat, and they change colors in the fall before they fall off the tree. The juniper has small, waxy and scale-like leaves that also have little berries on them. So they're very different. They would be classified different because even though they're both trees, there are two different species of trees. All right, when it comes to animals, Have you ever wondered why a trout is known as a fish, yet a whale is a mammal? Well, when things are grouped together and they are classified, some animals cannot be classified just by what's on the outside. If we look at the outside of a whale, we can see, oh yeah, it swims just like the fish on the screen. It lives in the ocean. It has a lot of things in common with a fish, but sometimes animals have to be grouped based on how they look on the inside. So a whale, as I mentioned, is a mammal. A trout is a fish, and those are two different species. So why would they be grouped differently like that? Why can't they both be classified as fish? Well, if we look at the skeleton of both, that helps us determine one reason why they are not the same species. So this is a whale skeleton. You can see similarities with humans and other mammals. There's the rib cage, the large backbone, the mouth is pretty big, the head pretty big, even like where they have that fin there, that it almost looks like a hand, doesn't it? Also, the way that they have babies and reproduce, the way that they get oxygen is more similar to mammals than it is to fish. If you look at a fish skeleton, well, the whale skeleton doesn't look that similar to the fish skeleton, does it? So that gives us another hint. They have to look on the inside of the mammal, or of the whale, to see why it's a mammal, rather than just looking on the outside. All right, another way to group animals are by whether or not they have a backbone. So if an animal does have a backbone, it is a vertebrate. Vertebrate means it has a backbone. Animals with backbones include fish, humans, horses, snakes, whales, just to name a few. Animals without a backbone are called invertebrates. Invertebrates have no backbone. That would include crabs, crayfish or crawfish, snails, insects, spiders, they have no backbone, and a worm. Now, notice how all of these, they all have a hard outer shell. Crabs, crayfish, snails, insects, spiders. They have a hard outer shell, also called an exoskeleton. That's what protects them from being smashed or hurt easily. Like our backbone protects us, their outer shell protects them, a hard outer shell. What about worms? Do they have a hard outer shell? Do they have a backbone? No, they don't. So they would be in a different category. They have no backbone and they have no outer shell. All right, another way we can classify animals is whether or not they are warm or cold-blooded. So what does it mean if an animal is warm-blooded? It means they always maintain the same body temperature. For humans, that's 98.6 degrees. Birds and mammals are warm-blooded. Cold-blooded means their body temperature changes with their surroundings. So if it's hot outside, their body is hot inside as well. If it's cold outside, they can get cold enough that their body could freeze easily. And that includes insects, fish, reptiles, amphibians, spiders, and arachnids. And of course, there's always exceptions to the rules, and there's always animals that, even though they should be cold-blooded, are not. But we're not going to get into that right now. All right. Using these characteristics, such as the presence of a backbone, or whether or not an organism is cold-blooded or warm-blooded, helps scientists to develop animal groups. Most of the animals you know about are birds, mammals, insects, fish, reptiles, amphibians, and spiders. All right, so this chart helps us see what each group is like. We have the birds. Birds are warm-blooded. They hatch from eggs. They have feathers covering their bodies, 2 legs and 2 wings. Notice how I didn't say every single thing about birds. I didn't include every single thing, especially if other types of organisms have that thing, like they have a heart. Well, yeah, they do. Most living things have a heart. I did not include that they have feet. A lot of living things have feet. So the characteristics that define them are the ones that we're listing, not everything else. All right, then we have mammals. Mammals are warm-blooded. They give birth to live young, so not in eggs. They provide milk for their babies. They have fur or hair covering their bodies. They have 4 limbs and large brains. We are also included in mammals, aren't we? Insects are cold-blooded. They have 6 legs, 3 body sections, wings, and antenna. Next is fish. Fish are cold-blooded. They hatch from eggs. They breathe through gills, live in water. They have scales that cover their bodies. Reptiles are cold-blooded. They hatch from eggs laid on land, and their scales cover their bodies. Amphibians are cold-blooded. They also hatch from eggs. Usually their eggs are in water and then, or in a moist, warm, wet environment. Once they hatch, they can live on land or in the water. They start life with gills that change to lungs, and they usually live near water. Spiders and arachnids, no picture of those, sorry. They are cold-blooded. They are invertebrates. They have 8 jointed legs, an exoskeleton, and 2 body parts. So those are some examples of, and then if you look at the list on the right, those are examples that live in Utah. All right, so here is a classification diagram. We're going to use this to classify this animal here, which is, of course, a lizard. So we're going to start at the beginning of the chart in our classifying diagram. This is a living thing. Yes, it is. So now we're going to go to the next line. We have a choice. Is it a plant or an animal? What do you think? Yep, if you said animal, that is correct. All right, would this animal be a vertebrate or an invertebrate? Does it have a backbone or not? What do you think? It is a vertebrate. It does have a backbone. All right, then our next 2 choices are, is it warm-blooded or cold-blooded? This is a lizard, so it is cold-blooded. Now our 3 choices are, is it a reptile, an amphibian, or a fish? So if I didn't know, I could go back to the list before and I could look at the characteristics and figure it out. But since we know what a lizard is, we know it is a reptile, isn't it? So that is an example of using a classifying diagram. And it is a reptile. All right, so what is next now that that's the end of our unit? Well, you are going to, after you watch this video, you're going to click on Habitats, Questions. You are only going to answer 1 question in this assignment. You will choose one of these questions to answer. So it's going to be question number 1, 2, or 3. You choose. Which question do you want to answer? Any question will work. And you're going to answer the question on the Google form. You will type in your answer. Based on your answer, I will know which one you chose. You don't have to tell me which question you chose. Then you're going to click Mark as done on the assignment, so I know for sure that you did do this assignment after watching the video. So you can choose question number 1. Why do scientists need to classify plants and animals? Question number 2. Why are wetlands so important to the plants and animals of Utah? Or you can choose question 3. Why are some species in Utah endangered? And to get this correct, you also have to have a complete sentence, so make sure that you have that. All right, so there are your questions. You are going to follow those directions, and this will be your last assignment, well, the last video to go with this unit, and then we're going to do our new assignment coming up shortly. You'll find out about that soon. All right, have a great day. Don't forget to submit your question, your answer to your question, and I'll see you guys later.